After arriving in the island nation of Chuuk, our team sits down this morning, as we will every morning for the next week, to discuss our goals for the day's dives and prepare a plan to safely execute those dives.
According to the planner here, it's 35 minutes. Of course, it's spread out like this.
Our team is made up of a collection of divers from around the western U.S. Although we all train together out in Oahu, Hawaii, our love for the ocean and history has brought us all back together to tackle some of the best wreck diving in the world. To understand why we descended upon this tiny island nation, we have to go back and understand World War II.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been... As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense. But always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory.
President Roosevelt makes good on his promise of victory and over the next few years delivered decisive blows to the Japanese military defenses. Perhaps none as satisfying as Operation Hailstone. U.S. naval forces suffered minimal losses while inflicting serious damage to the Japanese war machine. The one-sidedness of this battle prompted many to describe it as Japan's Pearl Harbor. The United States military was able to knock out over 250 Japanese airplanes and sink more than 200,000 tons of Japanese ships. These ships, nearly 50 in total, are still sitting at the bottom of the lagoon. Which brings us to day one. Plans today call for the team to make 3 dives on 3 different shallower wrecks around the lagoon.
Kevin is number 1. Who's number 2? Bruce or Mike?
Traveling nearly 12 hours from Oahu, the team wants to make sure that all of our gear is working 100% before tackling the deeper wrecks around the lagoon. The first dive today will be made on the Fujikawa Maru. Sunk on the first day of bombardment, the Fujikawa was used as an aviation transport. Some say because of the wartime material still on board, with the amount of sea life turning the ship into an artificial reef, this is one of Truk Lagoon's signature wrecks. It also doesn't hurt that because of the relative shallowness of the dive, almost any diver can come down and appreciate the history and beauty of the Fujikawa. So there would be no real wreck penetration, and although everyone on the team was trained in deep decompression diving using mixed gases, we would be following no decompression limits, since we were checking out equipment. Every diver gets lured into the wreck, but we kept it simple to the outer walkways, but I couldn't help but look through the missing windows at what was held inside. Like the head, complete with tiled Japanese baths. Continuing along the walkway towards the real cargo holds, you can see all the life that's growing along the wreck, including this large anemone with the skunk anemone fish. As we descended into cargo hold number 3, visibility was not very good. As we reached the bottom, we were met by drums that once held aviation fuel. Now free, the avgas hangs motionless in the water. Moving towards the stern to hold 4, we find thousands of rice wine bottles, the corks rotted out. But we also stumble upon the first reminder of what happened here in 1944. The sole of a sailor's boot, probably worn during the attack. As our dive time approaches 60 minutes, we near the end of our limit and it's time to head back to the waiting boat. Dive 2 was scheduled for the Yamagiri Maru. Unlike the Fujikawa, which sits upright on the bottom, this 430-foot long freighter settled on her side at a depth of 110 feet. The Yamagiri holds an infamous distinction of being one of only a handful of wrecks from the battle with a viewable skull. Most of the remains have been removed from the wrecks by the Japanese government, but somehow this ex-sailor slipped through the radar and now serves as a chilling reminder of the brutality of war. There are many stories behind this skull. It is fused into the bulkhead in the engine room, and many say from the explosion. But after reviewing the video footage and finding a lack of trauma to the back of the skull, I think it was placed here many years after the ship sunk. We have several goals for today's dive. As we head towards the bow, we begin to see our second target, the damage that led to her demise, a large bomb hole on her starboard side. One can only imagine the power of the explosion that created this hole, easily 15 feet in diameter. Bubbles leaking out from our trip into the ship's engine room. Where the Fujikawa was an aviation transport, the Yamagiri was carrying huge 18-inch shells for use by Japan's battleships, the Yamato and Musashi. These massive shells weighed over 1.5 tons each and can be fired 23 miles. Also hiding among the shells are pieces of construction equipment, and everything is covered in a fine silt. If we're not careful, we could blow out our visibility. As we return aboard the boat, everyone on the team is buzzing about the morning's dives, what we saw, the histories of these wrecks. The good news is, everything went according to plan, and this is only the first half of the first day of diving. We still have a week left. Now we go back to the truck stop and start planning some deeper, darker dives. We all know it can end too abruptly if mistakes are made. Unfortunately, some make those mistakes.